So I guess we can begin, and I will run and get the remote from Otto, but while I'm running around, maybe you can tell a joke. Yes, my best joke is as follows. I once was invited to a conference, and I was asked to present a presentation, and I arrived, and there was no remote. So that's my best joke. But there is also a second joke, which is not a joke. I'm married today. So this is not a joke. So, I think the question is that we should take care of our welfare. And I think you have to ask this question to yourselves. I really like the title of this event, How to Feel Well in Riga. I have lived in other places for 6 years, and for me, feeling well is just coming to Riga, and that's enough. But I think that we could still do many things to improve the lives of people that live in Riga. Today, I will speak about persuasive cities for sustainable well-being, and will try to tell what this means, how we can persuade people in the urban environment, so that eventually we arrive at sustainable well-being. Because we can do something that makes us better maybe for a week, but this is not our ultimate goal, because we have to strive to implement changes that continue to promote our well-being. There's a picture, a screenshot from Twitter. Of course, many people organize events devoted to urban environment and various other issues. And here you can see that people invite others to an event devoted to greening of Riga. And there are two components, this physical component and the social component, basically the immovable objects and the live people. And this interaction between these two components should promote well-being, and the well-being not of the physical objects but of people. This is usually one of the first pictures that I show, and I think that here we can see a very well-designed city with power generation facilities, with smart buildings. And then I always ask, if the city is so ideal, what is still missing here? People. I always trust that the engineers will build the best phones, communications, cables, panels, and so on. But we still need this interaction component so that we can ensure that there is good interaction between the people and the environment. There are some pictures that I found in the internet that makes people think about what decisions they make, because our well-being depends on our decisions that we make on a daily basis. On the right side, this is just a poster, it's not actually a staircase, but it reminds people about the consequences of their choices. Second, we know very well how our choices affect the environment, and environment is part of our lives, and so eventually we arrive at our souls. This is a recent example that I found, and I think it's very wonderful, because there is something in this box, and what it is? A bicycle. But if we look at the picture, it's a screen. And why this picture of a screen was placed on the box? Because the transporters were not careful with packages that contain bicycles, like we have seen in airports, for example. But as soon as the picture was changed, situation changed completely. So it's a very little technical change, but it had very dramatic consequences. And the companies that produce these bicycles actually suffered losses before this change. And after they introduced this picture, the number of problematic cases was cut by 30 to 40%. So it's a dramatic result. And the same refers to the producers, large producers of cars. And what do they place in the center? Two small green cars, and by this I want to say that they are ready for change. And I want to say that people have to participate in the changes as well. If we look at the streets and the dominating mean of transport in the streets, it's basically a car. But the healthiest way to move around, of course, would be either to walk or to cycle. I just wanted to remind you about these details. So, irrespective of the fact that we have this infrastructure, it still doesn't mean that the number of cyclists, for example, will increase if we have very good new infrastructure. This is an example from Austria, from Vienna. They had very good cycling infrastructure, but the number of cyclists actually didn't increase. So it means that we not only have to change the infrastructure, but also change the attitudes of people. So this is one of the theories from the social science, and this illustration shows that human attitudes, behaviors, and urban environments are linked. So if we change environment, it will change the attitude and the behavior, and vice versa. So if, for example, there is a new cycling route, people may start to cycle, but this is not guaranteed. So we have to look at what motivations we have used and what motivations we still have to change the attitudes of people towards certain things, and what effect these changes in behavior would have. Of course, we have a lot of information that is given to people on a daily basis, what is better, what is worse, what is more environmentally friendly, what is not. For example, the car spends your money and can make you more important, basically can make you fatter, while the bicycle does the opposite. It uses your energy and saves you money. So it's kind of slogan, but these slogans don't always work. If we look at motivational theories, then there are two main factors that affect the behavior. I think you have seen these two. Marketing companies and many other companies use these two motivational forces, though they have two very significant drawbacks. What drawbacks do you think they are? Of course, if you are offered 1,000 euros every day just for cycling, most probably you would do that. But what happens if you don't receive the money anymore? So the carrot. And most probably you will stop cycling. And the same refers to punishments. And the second drawback is that someone actually has to maintain the system of punishments and benefits. So you need the maintenance, and in addition to that, there is just a short-term impact. And then there is a different type of motivation. What would you do if you saw something like this? Most probably you would not think why these people are looking there, what is so interesting, do I really have to do that? No. There is a huge social influence. We just see that some people do something, we see their numbers, and we are already affected. And I think that the social influence is constantly available to us. The only problem is that the cities with various restrictions and limitations, like for example walls, don't let us see all of this. If you imagine what happened maybe 2000 years ago, someone would go to the meadows and would see someone angling, someone running after a cow. So there was this very good visibility, which is maybe worse in modern cities. This is my doctoral thesis. I wrote about systems that affect social behaviors. There are actually seven types of possible influences. If you have studied social psychology, I think you will know all of them. So if you look at this picture, then you already recognize that this is social learning. People see that someone else does something and they learn from this person and do the same. For example, they chop wood or cycle or do something else. So you watch and you learn. Also, people naturally compare themselves with other people. Remember how you looked for your mark in the list of results of your class and you felt very good if you were at the top. And we can use this aspect to ensure certain changes in the urban environment. Also, social norms is a very strong factor, like don't smoke, don't drink. But if we don't have any slogans or any rules, then people just watch the other people and try to adjust. Social promotion. People have greater motivation to participate if they know that the other people will do the same at that time. For example, like running a marathon. Of course, we don't get up in the morning with this idea that I will run a marathon today. But if we know that on a specific date we will have a marathon, then people are ready to run. Also, it's very natural for the people to cooperate. It's also very natural for them to compete. And people have high motivation to maintain their titles, like the best swimmer or the best employee or the best in a certain sector or area. And then you have a lot of motivation to maintain the status. Here, of course, we can have several number ones. For example, you can be number one in one very specific area. So there are 7 forms of these motivational factors, and all of these forms have better effects in certain areas, in certain activities. For example, social norms and social comparison work very well with attitudes. Something that we think that we feel like the water is not tasty. The green ones mostly promote cooperation. For example, if someone has negative attitudes towards someone else, then they can be involved in common activities. For example, together they could compete against the other team, and thus their interaction could be promoted. And the competition and public recognition are very efficient in involving people in certain activities. So competition helps to involve, while the comparison, public recognition, allows people to maintain high motivation. Some examples. This is a screenshot of my mobile phone. And here you can see the weather forecast. And let us imagine that someone wants to jog in the mornings. So we look at the weather forecast. The weather is very good and it's a very fine morning for jogging. So as you see, there is a special function jogging 374, and basically this additional function shows me how many people are jogging in my vicinity. So in the first case, this function worked well, but in the second it didn't. Because of the bad weather, only 12 people jogged. And this has potential to reduce my motivation. And for example, if we look at Chicago in January, it's very cold and no one wants to jog. But what is important that the system designers can adjust to the current conditions and, for example, change the content of information and say that during the last 3 months, so many people jogged. But the principle is that you can add additional functions to the basic function to, for example, see that there are so many people who do the same as you would like to do. So, this is a created picture. The next example. I have always underlined that there were many ways how people tried to improve their well-being by using various mobile applications. But there is a huge disadvantage. And this is why I try to guide you away from this mobile solution to the screen solution. Because if the person has a mobile phone in his hand, he also has a control of what he will do. I don't want to jog today, I don't look at the screen, and that's it. But here, in this urban environment, people have much less possibilities to change what the screen shows. They can do that, for example, only by their action, not by just putting the screen away. So if you drive on the street with a car, you can see how fast you drove, and maybe the next day you will choose a different way to get into the center. So this basically shows what is going on. And this is very positive, since there is no one behind your back who has decided what you should do. It just shows the existing reality, and it's quite often that it's enough for people to change their behaviors. For example, you can ask people on the street how many people who drive, for example, cycle through a certain street during the day. I received 5 different answers from 5 different people. It was in Austin, in Texas. So one said 50, 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000. And the people continue to live with these opinions. And I believe that in Riga people have as differing opinions as the people in Austin. But this screen basically doesn't allow for this diversity, because it just shows what's going on and there are no further questions. Of course, then we can ask how we can accumulate this data. This means that we need certain meters or sensors, for example, a meter that counts as a number of cyclists. Of course, it doesn't do more than just counts as a people, but you have to start with someone. The second option, big data. So, on the first level, we collect data, but on the second level, we understand what the data tells us. How many people drive, at what time of the day, what kind of people. Because there are some that cycle just on weekends, there are some that cycle to work. This level allows us to see what is the prevalence of certain groups. This is a Latvian-based solution that was installed in Tallinn, also counts cyclists, and can maybe show more detailed information, for example, the number of cyclists day by day, and so on. And then there is the next question. When we have understood the picture as it is today, we have to make the next step. Basically, we have to decide what we want to change. And this is the level where I work. And this relates to persuasive cities. So we have understood what is going on, and we want to increase the number of certain cyclists, or we want to make sure that a certain group is growing, and so on. Here are some concrete examples of solutions. So imagine that there are traffic jams after the work, and imagine how many cyclists are able to cross this crossroad in the evening, and how many cars can do that at the same time. So this just shows the dynamics, and people see the facts and see how their choices affect their lives. What we will do with Boston and with Cambridge, we will continue to speak with the municipalities. We have done that for 2 years, but now we will also use financing from their budget. For example, let us imagine that they have money for certain infrastructure, for example, cycling routes. So how can we inform the municipalities where exactly to build these routes? And then we thought that maybe we should place counters in specific areas of the city and say that the area that will ensure the largest growth will receive this new infrastructure because they have showed their desire to have this infrastructure. And basically the municipality can see that the society with its attitude demonstrated that they really want something. And to arrive at such solutions, we carried out a short survey of 14 companies in Boston and Cambridge, the autumn of 2015. So these 239 employees went to work and back every day, and they cycled more than 29,000 miles. So we counted them, and we saw what is the proportion of employees in a certain company cycling, what is the growth, and so on. We understood that this data has to be shown to everyone. So we placed screens in the company premises so that everyone can see what is the position of our company in comparison to other companies. So if someone works in Google, he or she comes to the screen and sees that Google is number 2. So what I should do to improve this? I will cycle. There are some additional examples, for example, how the screen can assess your choices as to their healthiness. And this can be made more accessible, for example, not only to the actual customer who comes into the store, but we could also demonstrate, for example, what is the proportion of healthy choices today, or in the store, or maybe in this area, or maybe we can even grade stores as green or red. So if you see that certain store has been classified as green, then you already know that this is a very healthy store. Another solution. So it's a technical solution. This solution allows to read the number of steps you have made during a day. For example, you have a mobile phone with an application that looks like this and counts the number of my steps. So, and I cannot delete this information, and this application has accumulated data about my steps since the moment when I purchased my phone. And we can for example, decide that the steps could serve as a certain currency, and we could do the following. We could place a screen in a square in a city and say that, this screen will now be used for storytelling. And depending on the number of your steps during a specific day, you will be able to write a certain number of words in this story. For example, if you've made 900 steps, but you want to write 1000 words, you'll definitely walk some more to ensure that you will have the necessary number of steps. So this solution should be quite simple so that you can directly see what you have to do at a specific moment in time. And of course, what you have to do has to be healthy and has to improve your well-being. So it doesn't actually matter whether it's walking or cycling or any other choice that would make your life better. Of course, then you can write stories, you can paint together, you can play Tetris together. And I also wanted to show another example. So this is a prototype, a tricycle, and we are working on this prototype now because cities are thinking about changes in their traffic structure. So during the night, this vehicle can deliver packages when a person doesn't need it, and during the day it can be used for cycling. And you saw one of the early prototypes in the previous slide. So, and this tricycle could be operated either by pedaling or by an electric accumulator. For example, let us imagine that someone uses an accumulator, the battery. And if we tell this person that 77% of the previous riders actually pedaled, then this might make this person to change his or her mind. So, and it's very specific. It's not like, you know, people cycled in this place or in that place. It's very specific. People cycled on this specific tricycle. Also, the appearance is very important. For example, if you pedal, the bike is green, and if you don't pedal, it's red. For example, you cycle on a certain street, and it's red. But let us imagine that you stop at the crossroads, and from another street, 5 other tricycles appear, and they are all green. And this is a very persuasive psychological factor that would make you change your mind. This is a prototype that we had in November of last year. So as you see, it's an autonomous vehicle. Currently, we are working on the computer vision. We have already demonstrated it in several cities, for example, in Taiwan, in cities in Japan, in Hamburg, and this is what the computer sees. Basically, it locates the cycling route, and it's tricycle because it has to be stable so that it can move autonomously. And speaking about the autonomy, I think this is a very nice cartoon, because I don't think that we will have vehicles that will decide everything. So this is a very nice example because people try to understand why one car stopped the other car. But the people were not involved in this process and actually don't understand why this happened. So by this I wanted to say that the autonomy should be intelligent, should be smart, includes a social component. As a media laboratory, we are under the architecture and planning faculty of the MIT. And I would like to demonstrate this slide because there will be 14 components that will change in urban environments. For example, underground parking, logistics, elevators. So any technology can make itself more autonomous, thus promoting our well-being. An example This example is more than 100 years old, has been in the city for a very long time, and it had a very different objective, very different role when it was built, but now it has become a communication channel. I don't know what these numbers mean, but I don't think it's important, because I wanted to show that we have a certain things that we want to communicate, and the technologies can allow or do allow us to change any object in the city into a screen. For example, we can show that so many people cycle there, so many people choose healthy food there. There are so many people who are engaged in sports. Of course, we don't see all of that, but the urban environment can deliver all this information to us, and we have to be able to use these opportunities in a smart way. And this is a very cheap and efficient and quick way to change the environment, just by introducing the follow-up. And this just makes information available, and people become surprised that they find out that someone else or many people do the same things as they do. That's all from my side, and thank you for listening.